everyone. I'm Molly the Kush RN, and you have reached Conversations with Kush podcast. Today we have Jude the Ganjier Dude, a very good friend of mine. He's brought a couple of products with him. He's going to open up the floor and talk about whatever he wants to today. We've already been talking a little bit about his home grow. So welcome, Jude. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Of course. Again, welcome back, I should say.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's nice to be in your house this time.
Yeah, thank you. How is your community? The last time we saw you, you were fostering a beautiful grow community out in Anoka that is hosted by House of Oil Works on Wednesdays, 2 Wednesdays out of the month, I believe.
The first Wednesday of the month is what we're doing currently.
Okay.
And it's evolved a little bit since last we spoke.
Okay.
I've been hosting a very mindful exploration of cannabis. I have a featured home grower. From the Anoka home growers community.
Okay.
And I have that particular grower come to the shop and discuss their growing methodology, their inputs, how they dry it, how they cure it, basically the entire process that they use.
Okay.
And no one in the room knows the cultivar name or the strain name, and there's no information about the genetic or anything. So it's just weed in a jar.
Okay.
And and so from that,
I like this.
it's very nice, right? There's nothing better than weed in a jar.
Yeah, right.
Except for weed in a joint or in mead, then I mean.
Yeah,
it's way
that's
better.
the best part, yeah.
So the grower will come in and discuss all of their methods, and then the audience that's there, I've developed a single page for charting the information.
Okay.
So we talk about the appearance of the cannabis. We talk about the aroma. We talk about the flavor. And then we talk about the experience that it gives us in the end.
Great.
After we've consumed it. So
It's like a mini Ganjier session then.
Very much so.
Wonderful. So not only are you encouraging people to grow their own medicine, you are then encouraging them to kind of break that process down and maybe offer up what they've grown to other people.
That's correct.
Right. Yeah. Nice.
Yeah.
I love it.
And then for anyone consuming it, doing it in a mindful way, where they're really taking the experience of cannabis and experiencing that wholly, right? If that's the right word to use.
Wholeheartedly? I don't know.
Yeah.
Full spectrum? I don't know. There's so many things we could say.
Exactly. And it's nice because it kind of prevents overconsumption because we don't want to do that, right?
Yeah.
We're in our community up in Anoka, and we don't want to have people out in our alleyway over consuming and then just having a bad time. Right?
Yeah.
We just don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And not only for them, but for the people around us and for all of our neighbors and things. And
awesome.
And yeah. We just like to keep it irie, right? Keep those vibes irie. That's
nice.
a nice way to
I
put
like
it.
it.
So
mindful. How mindful of you. That's awesome.
Yes.
I do love that you've brought the Ganjier experience though in, and I like that because I admire very much Ganjiers, and because they have such vast knowledge of cannabis, like way more than I have. And to be able to break it down for people. And then the other piece that I really like that you're doing is with the guild, where you're kind of collecting and like making that repository. So now you have this collection of like, this is what I've grown, these are my genetics, and people can, a patient or someone, a consumer could go to that person and be like, hey, I'm really looking for this thing that you've done. So it's so full circle. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I'm glad you noticed that.
I did. And this is news to me. I didn't know that you were doing this new process, so I'm really proud of you. Thank you.
Awesome. I'd love to have you come out sometime.
I want to.
And enjoy it. The next growers get together is next Wednesday, the 8th, and I'll be doing Royal OG. I'll be doing my own.
Okay.
Just because.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah.
So I'll be talking about this cultivar.
Okay.
And how I grew it outdoor, sun grown, full regenerative. Like I didn't use any amendments. My IPM was minimal. I used some Lost Coast plant therapy early on before the flower stage. After it flowered, there was nothing on it other than hydrogen peroxide and water mixed together to just keep all the pests away. So
Okay, so that keeps the pests off then?
generally speaking,
Okay.
that and just plain old water. If you get aphids, you can spray them off. Thankfully, I didn't have to deal with much of that this year. So
Good.
yeah.
What are give me 2 or 3 other tips that a home grower needs to kind of dial into to make an effective grow or have a beautiful product?
You got it. Top 3 things in this order. Genetics.
Okay.
Get good genetics. If you have good plants to start with, that's 80% of what you need right there. So good genetics.
Okay.
Next thing is good light source. The stronger your light, the more trichome your plant is going to produce. So outside under the sun produces a lot.
I bet.
It's quite nice.
Yeah.
It produces a lot of other things too on the outdoor grow, but we'll talk about that later. The third thing would be, for me, it's nutrient or it's my soil.
Okay.
So I make an engineered soil or super soil. It's just what I do. I like it. It's the ease of use for me. It's kind of the set it and forget it. I don't have to pH all my stuff. I don't have to use a chemistry set for me to go out and do my watering and take care of my plants. Others enjoy that. I don't, so I just don't do it.
Yeah, and there's formulas out there, right? People are kind of setting up these super soils or whatever you call them, I guess.
You got it. Yep. I used mine is sort of a variant from Doc Dab's super soil.
Okay.
It's kind of somewhere in between Subcool's mixture and Doc Dab's mixture and just kind of my own.
Okay.
So
what would be in that then, like a super soil? What's in that?
I start out with like a base potting mix, and then I amend it with bone meal, blood meal, feather meal.
Okay.
Just basically trying to cover all of the things that the plant is going to need, the 14 major minerals that it's going to need, right?
Okay.
NPK, nitrogen, potassium, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and then there's a litany of other things that it needs on top of that. So
similar to a tomato plant, right?
pretty close.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if you can grow a tomato, you can grow your own medicine, guys. So don't shy away from it.
Exactly.
What's a trichome?
A trichome. All right. A trichome is it's a vessel on a cannabis plant that actually holds all of the cannabinoid that we're after. It also has terpenes, flavonoids, all kinds of other things that are produced in the trichome itself. And there's all kinds of different structures of trichomes as well. What we're after are the capitate stalked trichome, meaning it has a bulbous head on top of a stalk, and it looks kind of like a crystal mushroom.
Okay.
Under magnification, you can really see them. They really do look sort of like a crystal mushroom coming
Nice.
off of the biomass or the plant itself. And so, yeah.
And when people use their jeweler loop, is that what they're looking for? And what specifically about trichomes are they trying to see or piece out?
Sure. For me, what I look for in when I have it under magnification, what I'm looking for is for that trichome to be mature, much like fruit on a fruit tree. The most ripe fruit falls when you shake it.
Okay.
And that's because the abscission point between the stem and the fruit has gotten to the point where it's thin enough that it just falls off when you give it just the lightest amount of shake. That's what I'm looking for. Sometimes people go by color of trichome.
Okay.
It's perfectly acceptable in most situations. There are certain cultivars that they don't change color, or they change color if you look at them funny, right? I mean, there are certain cultivars where if I touch it,
They're sensitive?
They are, yeah. Like if I touch it, or if there's too much wind, or if the light is too intense, they will change to a milky or an amber color. I don't always use that as my gauge. Perfectly acceptable to do so, but I just look for those trichome heads falling off. Like if I
Yeah.
see it starting to bend and fall over, I know that they're ripe. So,
Okay.
and I just keep an eye on it over the course of its life cycle and watch them grow. That's where I can get.
And how long typically does it take to grow a plant and to harvest stage?
Depending upon the cultivar of the plant, but most often it's going to be about 90-ish days.
Okay.
Rough estimate, give or take.
Is that both indoor and outdoor then, or does that differ?
Totally depends on the cultivar.
On the cultivar. Okay.
Yep.
Gotcha. Okay. Does it smell in your house when you grow indoors?
Thankfully, no, it does not. The filtration system that I have on my tent works quite well. It's an activated charcoal filter, and I have refillable activated charcoal filters from my tent manufacturer.
Okay.
So that way I don't have to take the big charcoal filter and just pitch it after,
Nice.
they last about 2 years roughly, the disposable ones. And the reusable, the charcoal will last about that long.
Okay.
It depends on how many grows you're pushing through it and how much humidity, and if you're using if you're using water appropriately in your humidifier, right?
Gotcha.
If you've ever put tap water in a humidifier and gotten that white dust all over everything,
Yeah.
and you're like, oh man, that will happen in your tent too.
Okay. So you have to use filtered water then, or spring water?
So
Or?
RO water or distilled water
Okay.
is what I use in my humidifier.
Okay.
I have a water distiller at home.
Yeah, I know
'cause-
you do. The water is so good at your house. I'm always like, oh, can I get a glass of water? It's always cold. And
Right.
Yeah.
The filter works great, and then I distill it further for my humidifier. So I
Okay,
run it through a
nice.
machine to actually distill it all out, so there's no trace minerals or anything like that in the humidifier water. So
Cool. Do you think that medicine is typically it's better to grow in a tent, or does it not really matter, or does it just kind of depend on what you're able to do? And
it totally depends on a few different things.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that biggest factor is your genetic. Like, what is that plant designed to do? Like, where did it come from? Is it an equatorial cultivar where it lives its life most of the time in a 12-12 environment? It's 12 hours of light, 12 hours of dark, right at the equator, roughly,
yeah,
year round. And those cultivars, those are things like sour diesel, things that are fuely and very fruity, but lemon or citrusy.
okay,
Citrus fuel. Those are your more equatorial cultivars, and those ones take a really long time to finish because they don't have a real growing season to worry about.
right,
It's much warmer and damp around the equator. It's very
Yeah.
humid. There's a lot of competing vegetation, all kinds of bugs and all kinds of other things. So the plants behave differently.
sure,
The further you get away from the equator, the more different it's going to be. Things that are more indica dominant, we'll say, those are going to do good because they've got a shorter growing or a shorter flowering time. Typically speaking, they're not going to run for 13, 14 weeks in flower.
gotcha.
Whereas some of those others will. So it all just depends. It all depends on your personal preference. So.
Nice. How come cannabis sometimes is better from certain areas, like the Emerald Triangle or Afghanistan? I don't know.
Also, yeah, that's a great question too. So there is a concept from viticulture or from wine called terroir. This applies to anything that's grown or harvested. Any kind of agrarian product is basically subject to this. And it's the idea of the soil, the environment, the sunshine, the air quality, all of those things contribute to the outcome of the product. So it's all of your inputs being
Right.
utilized in that particular area that are different from, say, another area. You brought up
Right.
the Emerald Triangle in California. That landscape is so different than Minnesota.
Right.
And the azimuth of the sun is so different. And, it's just the way that they're positioned globally speaking, it's just a very good spot. It's so far in from the coast that they get a lot of really good, clean ocean air that gets filtered out by all of the pine trees.
Nice.
And so it's very nice, good, clean air coming in. The soil is extremely rich. There was a lot of
Like volcanic activity, I would think, maybe, or
between the volcanic activity as well as all of the salmon in the area. The salmon would run and they'd go up the rivers and things, and then they would end up banking, and so there's a lot of good reasons why.
perfect storm.
Yeah, exactly. The elevation, all of it just lends itself to growing really great cannabis in that particular area. Minnesota has that as well. We have a particular terroir, or several. We only have two in the state that are recognized for winemaking, and these are codified in law by appellations of origin.
Okay.
So in Minnesota, we have two appellations. I don't know what they're called. I just know that we have two of them.
There's one, like St. Croix River Valley, I think is one, right?
That sounds right. And then I'm not sure what the other is.
Me neither.
And it's from viticulture. It's from wine.
Okay.
I'll look it up.
Okay.
So it would stand to reason that Minnesota could do the same with cannabis, and so might be a good conversation to have with some legislators this year.
Yeah.
Good, easy win, bipartisan support. Something you can really get behind about your constituents
Both
wanting
sides,
to say.
right? Yeah.
Exactly. Can you imagine? Like they'd be able to have Red River Valley Northern Lights.
That would be awesome.
The only way you can get this expression is in the Red River Valley appellation.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
That would be cool. We'll get down there and start lobbying.
Heck yeah.
What else does a person need to know about home grow to make their home grow successful?
I guess some really good tips just from doing it over the last couple of years. Don't overwater.
Okay.
Overwatering happens more frequently than underwatering. That's probably one good thing to watch out for. Another thing is if you do advance from growing plants normally and you start doing low stress training or anything like that, make sure that you are matching your pot size to the size of the canopy. I recently, actually just now, in fact, to my current home grow, I've got a 3 foot by 3 foot tent.
Yeah.
And I low stress trained a plant to fill that in. It's a single plant that has a canopy that's 3 feet by 3 feet square. But I left it in a 5-gallon pot. So it is really hungry.
Yeah.
It is very, very hungry. My super soil is no longer super. It is Clark Kent soil.
Yeah.
So
feed me, Seymour, feed me.
That's exactly right. And that's what she's saying. She's unhappy about life right now. But I'm getting her, nursing her back to health, so to speak. And my other plant, though, she's rocking it out.
Yeah.
So, but I didn't do anything weird to her. I just let her just go.
Yeah. How fun. What a fun journey. I mean, I feel like the plant is so complex. And even though it's like as easy as growing a tomato or whatever, like there are some differences, like, 12 and 12 and like the humidity and having a fan over it and, all different kinds of things and like where you place it in your home. And, but it sounds like it can be done fairly inexpensively with a fairly small amount of space.
Yeah.
And so typically how much can one plant yield?
That is also a very good question. My outdoor grown plants this past season, I had approximately 2 pounds of dry cured that came off of a single plant from my outdoor. The largest yield I've had on indoor so far has been not that much, not 2 pounds.
Okay.
Yet.
Okay.
That's why I was low stress training this other plant.
Yeah.
Just to see how much yield I could actually get from it.
That outdoor yield, that's a pretty nice size though. That's good.
Yeah, it was a sizable plant.
Yeah.
And they did pretty good.
Nice.
For the parts that.
What did the neighbors say?
They loved it.
They did?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. All of my neighbors were excited. They were like, look at that. You can just do this now. I'm like, yeah, you can.
That's awesome. I'm glad they were supportive of that.
Yeah.
Did they want to try it?
So far, they haven't asked, but
Okay.
I'm sure they will.
They're at the fence every day, like, what are you doing over there, Jude?
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome. So not only is growing important though, but then harvesting and curing is also important, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so give me a couple tips on that.
Sure. So drying and curing is the second part of the whole process. Once you get growing down, you'd think that was like the hard part's over. It's actually just starting. Like that was okay. You did that. Now it's on to the harvesting, drying, and curing.
Yeah.
What I do, I try to keep my environment as close to 60 degrees Fahrenheit and 60% relative humidity.
Okay.
As close to that as I can get. My basement in the wintertime gets close to that whenever I run a humidifier, because obviously it's going to be very dry in the dead of winter here. It's always always very dry.
Right.
But the nice part is that the basement is nice and cool. I just have to give some supplemental humidity in there to keep it. I actually have to raise the humidity in order to dry it properly. It's just sort of a weird thing. It's a weird concept, but I don't want it to dry too fast.
Okay.
Because it will lock in immobile water. So there's moisture in the plant that's immobile. And if it dries out too fast, one, it'll dry out all the stuff on the outside of it. It'll become brittle, dry, and nasty. And then the middle part won't be dry enough. And so as you put it into cure, you can get all kinds of nasties from that. That moisture will release, and it'll just be not fun.
Okay.
And so I try to keep it at that 60 and 60, and I do that for anywhere between 10 to 14 days-ish, depending on the cultivar, right?
Okay.
Depending on how full the harvest actually is, how big those flowers are, how dense they are. It's all going to play a role in how long it has to be done. So, yeah.
Okay.
60 and 60, 10 to 14 days is the easy button version. Boom. And then after that 10 to 14 days, I will I will bucket from the stem, basically just pull those off, and then trim. I dry trim. So I trim off all the sweet leaf after it's dry, and then I'll put it into a mason jar.
Okay.
So,
nice.
yeah, and sometimes I'll put a humidity pack in there. Often it's a Boveda humidity pack, 62% or 58%.
Shout out to Boveda.
Heck yeah. Every jar, every time.
Yes.
And what's nice about that is it keeps everything in the jar at the relative humidity that I'm looking for.
Great segue. Tell me how you should store your cannabis, because I think this is an important thing for people that may be new to cannabis and kind of novice, that knowing that, storing it improperly or not to the best of the conditions can change the composition of it and change the actual plant. So go ahead.
Absolutely. What I do for long-term storage is I keep it in a mason jar, in a ball jar or mason jar, something airtight, and I keep it out of sunlight, keep it out of UV light of any kind. Like keep it in a cool, dark, dry place.
Okay.
60 degrees and 60% relative humidity. Oddly enough, I keep everything stored at about that temperature as well.
Okay.
And then I just keep my humidity packs in the jar just to maintain that moisture content. Some people say it robs terps. I don't think it does that. I think it encapsulates everything.
Yeah.
And makes it so the volatiles are not volatilizing.
Okay.
If those volatiles aren't volatilizing, they're staying put.
Okay.
Meaning you're going to have more of those in your end product. If I open the jar and I have that big waft, that means all those volatiles have expressed. They're done. They're not going to go back into the cannabis. They're gone.
Right.
So it makes sense to me that whenever I use a humidity pack, if it doesn't have a strong smell, that means it's doing its job. And then I'll get that smell when I break the nug open and pack the bowl or pack the joints or whatever. Yeah.
What's your favorite way to consume?
My favorite way to consume flower is in a joint. I like having paper. I like having that fresh every time experience without having to clean glass.
Me too.
It's my That's my consumption method of choice.
Between flower and going green, then what do you like better? Just
Between flower.
flower and like dabbing,
Oh,
or
yeah. Cool. It depends on the day, and
Okay.
it depends on the cultivar, and it depends on the live rosin or the hash that I'm going to be consuming. Typically speaking, I will do both, right? Like I love the act of smoking. I actually love the whole process of crafting a joint or packing a cone. I'm
Yeah.
terrible at rolling.
Me too. But like breaking it down and stuffing the cone and twisting it up and having it all ready. I think there's like such a ritualistic process to
Yes.
like when you see people breaking down their weed and like getting it ready, it's like religion almost.
Yeah.
Or like meditation
You
kind
get
of.
to see the ritual in practice, and that's what I really like about it is taking that mindful moment out of the day. I don't consume during the day. My day job is relatively, what's the word?
Task oriented.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It doesn't suit me well to be inebriated on
Sure.
cannabis during
Yeah,
the
yeah,
day. Not at least to a certain extent. I'll microdose a lot of the time, 5 milligrams here, 10 milligrams sometimes.
Yeah.
Take a nice micro. It cuts the edge off. I can get through meetings and have my corporate day job life,
Right.
my slideshow of a day for my type A personality to just deal with, right? Like being able to just say, okay, I have my checklist. This is what I need done today.
Yeah.
Here's my slideshow of a day. I checked everything off. Let's rock and roll.
Cool.
And then at 5:01, I've got I've got everything ready at the table. I'm pulling sweet leaf at 5:01. I'm grinding and everything is
Nice.
getting ready to rock. Sometimes during the day, I'll roll one during lunch and save it for after work, and then have something to look
Nice.
forward to.
Get you through that second half of the day.
Yeah, exactly. Like
That's
another meeting.
awesome.
Oh,
Right.
I don't want to go to another meeting. But yeah. So that's my favorite consumption method, though, is in a joint. Otherwise, dabbing live rosin is absolutely a wonderful thing. It's
Yeah.
the most pure way to consume cannabinoid. It is probably the healthiest way next to a tincture. To get cannabinoid into the system. So
Gotcha.
from a health perspective and being a nurse, tinctures and topicals are two big things in
Yeah.
terms of like how I would, and how clients approach us often is, how can I have this or how can I consume this in the least harmful way to me as possible?
Yeah.
And that becomes a question a lot in our line of work, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Yeah.
And-
Thank you for bringing that up, because I feel like combustion is one of the things that we have concerns about. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously it's, for me anyway, like free the plant, like what you need is what you need.
Exactly.
But, just educating people that there may be some other options that could be a little bit healthier for you. And, if you want to consider those, they're there for you. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Things like dabbing. Dabbing is a good way to inhale your cannabis without combustion.
Yeah.
You're still going to get certain things that aren't the greatest for you, but it's not
Right.
it's not nearly as detrimental as combustion.
Right.
And combustion is creating all kinds of weirdness and carcinogens and all kinds of other things.
yeah.
But
But
I
it'll
s-
still give you that quick onset if you're someone that needs, something right away.
Exactly.
Versus taking an edible that's going to take a while to kind of get into your system and kind of hit your system. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
More acute rather than systemic.
for sure.
And that's why inhaling is so nice, is because it is that fast onset.
Yeah.
And interesting fact about combustion
Yeah.
is you're still vaporizing, because it's those trichome heads that are all over the plant biomass.
Yeah.
As the biomass burns, it's vaporizing
Sure.
all of those cannabinoids. All you're doing is eliminating the combustion piece. You're still
Right.
vapor. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Whenever you
Okay.
dab, it's just taking the trichome heads, is taking all the juice out of those trichome heads sometimes, and depending upon what your end product is, but
Yeah.
and just vaporizing that. So that's a good way to do it. Tinctures are probably the single best, healthiest way to do it. We call them tinctures. They're emulsions.
Yeah.
Cannabinoids are fat soluble, not water soluble. They will dissolve in alcohol as well, so it can be made into a typical tincture, real tincture.
Green Dragon.
Green Dragon, that's right. So you can do that. You can emulsify them into any kind of an oil because of being fat soluble. It works really well in fractionated coconut oil or MCT oil.
Yep.
Hemp seed, grapeseed oil is a really good combination as well. Olive oil is always a great choice.
Yeah.
Coconut oil, right?
Yeah.
Plain old coconut oil.
Nice.
So it'll dissolve in those, but those tinctures are really great. You can titrate them a lot easier too. It's hard to titrate an inhalation method because you don't really know how much you're actually getting per pull.
Right.
My lung capacity is different than yours.
Exactly.
The way I draw is different. Like it makes it much easier to titrate it up if you're using a tincture.
Yeah.
And then, a topical product is something that's not really going to enter your bloodstream too terribly much, if it does at all.
Right.
And so, yeah, those are the top two healthiest. And then, for inhalation methods, that
Nice.
vaping and then.
I love it. Thank you. What a great breakdown. Okay, quick. Give me, first, tell me what your grow community has up and coming, and tell me 2 great takeaways that you've learned from your community thus far.
Perfect. All right. So an update of what's coming up for our community, for our grow community up in Anoka. We've got some good things in store. So this first month of the year, for the home growers meetup, I'll be showing off my home grow.
Nice.
And then in February and March, we will have our featured home grower as well. The other things I'm planning are probably a demonstration on how to make bubble hash. So I think I'll have that queued up probably in March.
Who's going to do it?
I probably will.
Okay, nice.
So, yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I've converted a washing machine, a tabletop wash machine,
Cool.
to do a lot of the movement for me, so I don't have to have it in 5-gallon buckets.
That is awesome. I want to go to this.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. I'd love to have you there.
Yeah.
I think that'd be great to have a live demonstration on here's how you make bubble hash, or here's how I make bubble hash anyway.
Yeah.
And see that product and see it come out and see it in the sieve bags and be like, oh, okay, now I understand a little more about hash.
For sure.
Because I remember whenever I was younger, I didn't understand what hash was. I thought it was something completely different.
Yeah.
And it was always sort of scary. It was like, oh, no, not hash. That sounds frightening. Now I'm like, hash, yeah, let's do it.
Right.
let's go.
Yeah. When I was in high school, I was an exchange student and I went to Italy, and the girl that I lived with was like, oh, let's smoke some hash. I was like, all right. Oh my God. Mind blown. So yeah, I had a really interesting experience with hash the first time, but I have enjoyed it many times since. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Awesome. Did she roll it into a spliff, like with tobacco?
Yes.
It's very common, very, very common in European countries.
Yep.
I went to when I did my test for Ganjier, I had two folks from the Netherlands that were in the class with me. And it was quite funny at the end of the exam, and after everybody's tested at the end of that day, we have a chillum ceremony. And a chillum is a stone pipe that was customarily used to smoke hashish in the older countries, right?
Okay.
The stone pipe, and there's a process that goes with it, and it's a whole ceremony. And these guys from the Netherlands were like, "Aren't you going to mix it with tobacco?" Like they kept asking, "Are you going to put tobacco in there?" Like, we aren't getting anything from this because we don't have the tobacco,
right?
Because nicotine and tobacco sort of play off of each other.
Yeah.
And so they were sort of like, "Oh, this won't do anything for us because we're there's no tobacco in there," and it went through the whole circle. They did not take a second pull off of that chillum, I will say. They were they were very much in the couch. They were like, I'm good.
It's strong.
It was much stronger than they anticipated.
Yeah,
so it was,
for sure.
It was great. But
Okay, so update on them. And then you said, what was the first one? I'm sorry.
Sure.
Yeah.
The update.
Takeaways.
Yeah. The takeaways.
Bubble hash
Bubble
and-
hash is going to be something that I'm looking forward to doing, and a little bit of probably spending time at the Capitol or trying to get some information from my home growers to put in front of their legislators.
Love it.
Yeah, like that's the other piece of all of it is that as these walls are being torn down, because they're still being torn down.
Yes, they are.
It's important to stay engaged. Like we've gotten to the point where we have commoditized cannabis. We've made it into a commodity product. It isn't free. If it were free, we could just have it and everything would be good to go.
Right.
It's not to say it's bad. It's just not in that state where it could be. And so there's a lot of room for improvement still. And so I'm hoping that we can all stay engaged and come out of the other side of this with a really strong cannabis program for the state of Minnesota that is very centric to small growers putting out quality product. There's a place for large scale grow that is doing, equating it to alcohol.
Right.
I enjoy a Budweiser during the summer on a hot day if I can only get a Budweiser where I'm at.
Right.
If I can get,
an IPA.
I can get an IPA, if I can get something from 10K Brewing, or if I can get something from, one of my local microbrews, I'm going to do that for the flavor, for the taste and the experience that I get from that, for the love that those folks put into it.
Yeah,
I know
for sure.
that they're crafting it with such heart, and that's how I enjoy my cannabis too.
Yeah,
the
same.
folks put so much heart and so much of themselves into it. They know their inputs. They know their cultivars backwards and forwards, and they understand all of those things. They put love into it. That's what I enjoy in my cannabis.
Yeah, nice.
Anyway,
grow communities, I just want to wrap it up then and say is a great place and a natural place to have those boots on the ground, to foster that sense of community where it's like, we're all in this together. So like, let's take our collective voice down to our legislators now and let them know what we expect from them.
Exactly. It's giving them a voice to take to that Capitol. Sometimes those folks can't make it there to advocate on behalf of themselves.
Right.
And that's often the case, right?
Yeah.
It takes a lot to go down there. I mean, you were there before all of the legalization, right? You were in the trenches, and you understand how much effort it takes to get down there and just to lobby, to be present, even to be in support of things, not even to do the lobbying, but just to be in support of something takes a ton. And so, yeah.
Okay, so remind me again, it's first Wednesday of every month?
First Wednesday of every month, unless that Wednesday is a holiday.
Okay.
Like the first was Wednesday.
Right.
I didn't have it then, so I bumped it to the 8th.
Okay. Yeah. So first Wednesday of every month is at House of Oil Works. And what's the address?
1919 South 2nd Avenue, Anoka, Minnesota.
Yay! Go check out Jude and his beautiful grow community.
Yes, please.
Check out some of the local grows people have going on, exchange tips and wins and losses, and it's a really nice way to get involved with your community and to just learn a thing or two. I always feel like, we can learn so much from each other. So thank you, Jude, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
It's
wonderful.
Yes, thank you so much. That's it for Conversations with Kush podcast tonight. And you've hit the 1-y.